She was still bleeding when they announced her replacement. Sera's knees pressed into the cold stone platform, arms bound behind her back, the taste of copper sharp on her tongue. 500 wolves stared up at her, silent now, waiting. The Triplet Alpha Kings stood 3 feet away, their backs to her, like she wasn't even worth facing. This Omega, Alpha King Damon's voice rang across the ceremony ground, smooth and absolute, has been judged unworthy of the royal pack. The crowd murmured. Hungry, eager. Sera's breath came shallow. The cut above her eye dripped steadily, warm and wet, sliding down her cheek. She didn't move to wipe it away. Her hands were tied. Her wolf was silent, buried deep under suppression cuffs clamped around both wrists, not the decorative silver ones the royal Omegas wore. Iron, the kind that burned. Her bloodline is unregistered, Alpha King Rylan continued, his voice quieter than Damon's but no less cutting. No family claim, no rank, no proof of worth. Sera's jaw tightened. She could feel the mark beneath the iron cuff on her left wrist, the one that burned hotter than the metal ever could, the one she'd hidden since childhood, wrapped in leather and lies and the desperate hope that she'd never have to use it. She'd been so careful. Until 3 days ago, when she'd defended a kitchen Omega from a drunk pack warrior, and her scent had spiked with something that made the Triplet Kings stop mid-conversation across the hall. Something that smelled like old magic, like royalty. They'd dragged her to the healers, stripped her down, found nothing, because she'd swallowed the pain and let her wolf bury the truth deeper. But they'd still judged her, still dragged her here, still. "We have chosen another," the third voice said. Alpha King Caden, the silent one, the one who'd watched her with something that might have been regret before he turned his back like his brothers. The crowd erupted. Sera's vision blurred, not from the blood, from the wave of crushing humiliation that slammed into her chest as another Omega stepped onto the platform. Beautiful, elegant, everything Sera wasn't. The woman smiled at the kings. They smiled back. And Sera finally understood. This wasn't about worthiness. It was about erasure. She dropped her gaze to the stone beneath her knees and pressed her tongue against her teeth to keep from screaming. 2 more weeks. Just 2 more weeks until the blood moon ceremony, when the old families presented their lineage marks to the crown. 2 more weeks and they'd know exactly what they'd just done. The thought settled in her chest like a blade, cold, sharp, patient. 3 months later, Sera pressed her palm against the cold stone wall behind the packhouse kitchens and listened to the sound of her own heartbeat. Steady, calm, alive. She'd survived the shame, survived the laughter, survived 3 months of being invisible, working in the kitchens, keeping her head down and her mark hidden. 14 days left. "Still lurking in shadows, little mouse?" Her breath caught. She didn't turn around. Didn't need to. She knew that voice. Smooth and cold, and threaded with the kind of amusement that came from men who'd never been told no. Alpha King Damon, the cruelest of the triplets, the one who'd smiled when the crowd cheered her humiliation. "I'm working," she said quietly, and keeping her eyes on the stone. "The kitchens need supplies. You're avoiding the main corridors." His footsteps were silent, but she felt him move closer, felt the oppressive weight of his dominance pressing against her spine. "Do you think we don't notice?" She finally turned. Damon stood 3 feet away, devastatingly beautiful in the way apex predators were. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes like winter storms. Power rolled off him in waves. He was looking at her the way he always did now, like she was beneath notice. "I'm not avoiding anyone, Alpha King." The title scraped her throat. "I know my place." His lips curved, not quite a smile. "Do you?" Sera's nails bit into her palms. The mark on her wrist pulsed once, hot and insistent, like a heartbeat separate from her own. Not yet. She met his eyes for just a second, and just long enough to let him see she wasn't broken. Damon's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. "Careful, little mouse." His voice dropped, soft and lethal. "You've already been judged once. Don't make me remind the pack why. He walked past her, close enough that his scent wrapped around her. Cedar and smoke and dominance so thick it made her wolf whimper. Sera waited until he disappeared around the corner. Then she smiled. Across the territory, in the royal packhouse war room, Alpha King Rylan stared at a map and felt nothing. The northern borders needed reinforcement. Alliance negotiations were scheduled for next week. There were a dozen critical decisions waiting for his attention, but all he could think about was the Omega in the kitchens. "You're distracted." Rylan didn't look up. He knew his brother's voice. "Alpha King Caden, the middle triplet, the Watcher. I'm fine. You've been staring at the same section of map for 15 minutes. Caden moved beside him, arms crossed. His presence was different from Damon's, quieter, no less powerful. "What's wrong?" Rylan's jaw worked. "Do you ever think about her?" Silence. "The Omega," Rylan continued, quieter now. "The one we judged, Sera." Caden went very still. "We did what was right," Rylan said, but the words felt hollow. "She had no registered bloodline, no family claim. We assumed," Caden interrupted softly. "We didn't verify. There was nothing to verify. The records were incomplete." Caden's gaze drifted to the window. "I checked again last week." Rylan's head snapped up. Why?" "Because she looked at Damon yesterday morning like she wasn't afraid anymore." Caden's voice was thoughtful, troubled. "And she should be. We destroyed her in front of the entire pack." So? "So I've been watching her." Caden's eyes narrowed slightly. "And I don't think she's what we believed." The words settled between them like smoke. Rylan wanted to argue, wanted to say it didn't matter, that the judgment was final. But he'd felt it too, that shift in her scent 3 months ago. That flash of something ancient and powerful before her wolf had buried it. "Damon won't care," Rylan said finally. Caden nodded slowly. "I know." Neither of them saw their eldest brother standing in the doorway. Alpha King Damon leaned against the frame, expression unreadable, every word he'd just heard burning in his chest like poison. When for the first time in 3 months, doubt crept in. In the kitchen, Sera scrubbed her hands and counted days. 14 left. 14 days until the blood moon ceremony, when every wolf with royal lineage would present their mark to the crown. Her wrist throbbed beneath the leather cuff. The Triplet Alpha Kings had shamed her, humiliated her, erased her. Soon they would kneel. She smiled into the rising steam and went back to work. The basket was too heavy. Sera knew it the moment she lifted it, felt the way her shoulders protested, the strain in her lower back. But she'd been carrying impossible weight for 3 months. What was another load of root vegetables? She pushed through the kitchen's back entrance into the narrow corridor that led to the cold storage. The space was dim, unlit by scattered oil lamps that cast more shadow than light. Her footsteps echoed softly against stone. Almost there. The basket slipped, just an inch, but enough that she had to stop, readjust her grip, brace it against her hip. Her breath came harder than it should. The iron cuffs were still there, hidden beneath leather wraps she'd fashioned herself. They weakened her, made everything harder, kept her wolf buried, kept her secret safe. She was 3 steps from the storage entrance when she heard voices. Male. Multiple, coming closer. Sera's heart kicked against her ribs. She recognized those voices, all 3 of them. The Triplet Alpha Kings, here, now, in this hallway. She pressed herself against the wall, basket clutched tight, and prayed they'd walk past without noticing. She was good at being invisible, and she'd had 3 months of practice. "The northern packs are posturing," Damon's voice carried first, sharp with irritation. "They think we're weak because we haven't retaliated for the border incident." "We're not weak." That was Rylan, steady and measured. "We're strategic. There's a difference. Strategy looks like hesitation when wolves are watching." They rounded the corner, all 3 of them. Sera's breath stopped. She should have moved, should have ducked into the storage room or back toward the kitchens. But her body locked, frozen in place like prey before predators. Damon saw her first. His eyes cut to her, sharp and immediate. His stride didn't falter, but something in his expression shifted. Recognition, dismissal. "Move," he said, not to her, to his brothers, but Rylan had already stopped. He stood 5 feet away, perfectly still, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His nostrils flared slightly. Caden stopped beside him, silent, watching. The air in the corridor changed, thickened. Sera's pulse hammered in her throat. She pressed harder against the wall, basket trembling in her grip. "You're blocking the hall," Damon said, his voice cold with impatience. He hadn't stopped, hadn't even looked at her twice. "Move." She opened her mouth to comply, and the basket slipped from her hands. It hit the floor with a crash that seemed impossibly loud in the narrow space. Vegetables scattered across stone. A jar of preserved herbs shattered, spilling sharp, pungent scent into the air. And beneath it all, just for a second, something else. Her scent, raw, unfiltered. The suppression cuffs couldn't catch everything when her control fractured. It bloomed in the hallway like lightning before a storm. Old magic, wild earth, something that tasted like autumn and blood and forgotten crowns. Rylan inhaled sharply. Caden's head snapped toward her, eyes wide. And Damon finally stopped walking. He turned slowly. The 3 Alpha Kings stared at her. Sera dropped to her knees instantly, hands shaking as she scrambled to gather the scattered vegetables. Her face burned. Her wolf clawed at her chest, desperate to surface, to answer whatever it sensed in them. She shoved it down, buried it, wrapped it in iron and willpower and 3 months of practice. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, I'll clean this up. Stop!" Damon's command cut through her panic like a blade. She froze. To hands full of bruised turnips, head bowed. Silence pressed down. She could feel them. All 3 of them, standing over her, radiating confusion and something else. Something that made her mark burn hot enough to hurt. "Look at me." Damon's voice was quieter now. Still absolute, but different. Sera's hands tightened around the vegetables. She didn't want to look up. Didn't want to see whatever was in his face. "I said, look at me." Slowly she raised her head. Damon stood directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the way his jaw was locked, the tension in his shoulders. His eyes swept over her face, tracking the fading scar above her eyebrow. The one from 3 months ago. His expression was unreadable. "What are you?" he asked. The question landed like a fist to her chest. Sera's throat closed. "I don't understand." "Alpha King. You're sent." Rylan moved closer, his voice tight, strained. It changed. Just now. "I don't know what you mean." The lie tasted like ash. "You're wearing suppression cuffs." Caden spoke for the first time, his tone thoughtful. Careful. "Why?" Sera's breath came too fast. Her mind raced. She couldn't answer that. Couldn't give them anything. "Standard issue," she managed. "For all unmated Omegas in service?" "Those aren't standard issue." Damon crouched in front of her, bringing his face level with hers. "Those are iron. We haven't used iron suppression in 50 years. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Where did you get them?" His eyes bored into hers, winter storm turning razor sharp. "I don't remember." "Liar." The word cracked between them. Sera flinched but held his gaze. She couldn't look away, couldn't bow. And something in her refused. Damon's eyes narrowed. "You're hiding something." "Everyone hides something, Alpha King." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You taught me that." His expression darkened. For a second, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. Then it was gone. He stood abruptly, stepping back. "Clean this up. Report to the main hall tonight after dinner service." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. All 3 kings looked at her. "Because I'm telling you to," Damon said coldly. "Or would you prefer another public judgment?" The threat hung in the air. Sera's hands shook. She pressed them flat against the floor to hide it. No, Alpha King. Good. He turned to his brothers. Let's go. Rylan hesitated. His gaze lingered on her, tracking the leather wraps around her wrists, or the careful way she held herself, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Rylan, Damon snapped. He moved. Caden was the last to leave. He paused in the doorway, glanced back at her with those quiet, observing eyes. Be careful, he said softly. Then he was gone. Sera stayed on her knees in the empty hallway, surrounded by broken glass and scattered vegetables, her entire body trembling. Her mark burned like a brand. They'd smelled it, not all of it. Not enough to recognize, but enough to question, enough to summon her. She pressed her wrapped wrist against her chest and tried to breathe through the rising panic. 13 days. She just needed 13 more days. But as she gathered the vegetables with shaking hands, as she cleaned up the broken jar and wiped the floor clean, one thought circled through her mind on repeat. They were starting to see her, and she wasn't ready, not yet. In the war room, 3 Alpha Kings stood in tense silence. That scent, Rylan said finally. I know, Damon replied. It was... I know. Caden crossed his arms. We need to find out what she is. Damon's jaw worked, his hands curled into fists at his sides. Tonight, he said. We'll find out tonight. But even as he said it, even as his brothers nodded in agreement, one truth settled heavy in his chest. That scent had called to something in him. Something he didn't understand. Something that felt dangerously close to recognition. Sera's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stood in the kitchen, elbow deep in washing water, scrubbing the same plate for the 3rd time. Around her, when the other Omegas moved through dinner preparations with practiced efficiency, chopping, stirring, tasting. No one spoke to her. They never did anymore. Contaminated by shame, one of them had whispered after the public judgment, best to keep distance. Sera didn't blame them. In a pack, association meant everything. Being seen with her meant being associated with unworthiness, with rejection. You're going to scrub through the ceramic. The voice was gentle, female. Sera looked up. Maya stood beside her, one of the few kitchen Omegas who still acknowledged her existence. Older, kind-eyed, with silver threading through her dark hair. Sorry, Sera murmured, setting the plate aside. Maya's gaze dropped to Sera's wrists, to the leather wraps that never came off. You're afraid. It wasn't a question. Sera's throat tightened. I have to report to the main hall tonight. Maya went still. Why? They didn't say. Sera pulled another plate from the water, focused on the task. Anything to avoid the concern in Maya's eyes. After dinner service. The Kings? Sera nodded. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Whatever you're hiding, child, they're going to find it. Sera's hand stilled in the water. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Maya moved closer, her voice dropping even lower. I've been working these kitchens for 30 years. I've seen Omegas come and go, watched bloodlines rise and fall. Her eyes held Sera's. And I've never, in all my years, seen someone smell the way you did in that hallway. Sera's heart stopped. You were there? I was bringing wine to the storage cellar. I stayed out of sight. Maya's expression softened. Whatever you are, Sera, it's bigger than kitchen work and leather wraps, and those kings felt it. I'm nothing, Sera said quietly, desperately. Just an unregistered Omega who... Don't lie to someone who's been kind to you. Maya's voice held gentle reproach. It's insulting. Sera's eyes burned. She looked down at the water, at her distorted reflection on its surface. 13 days, she whispered. Until it doesn't matter anymore. Sera pulled her hands from the water, dried them on her apron. Until everyone knows. Maya studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Be careful tonight. The Triplet Kings are many things, but patient isn't one of them. She walked away before Sera could respond. Sera stood alone at the washing basin, watching steam rise from the water, and tried to prepare herself for what was coming. The main hall was empty when she arrived. Sera stepped through the massive double doors, her footsteps echoing against marble floors that stretched toward a raised platform at the far end. The same platform where she'd knelt 3 months ago, where she'd bled. The space felt larger at night, colder. The high windows let in moonlight that cut silver paths across the floor. She walked to the center of the hall and waited. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath the iron suppression. It didn't like this place. Too many bad memories. Too much shame soaked into the stones. She pressed her wrapped wrist against her side and breathed slowly. In, out, steady. You came. The voice came from above. Sera's head snapped up. Alpha King Rylan stood on the second-floor balcony, hands braced against the railing, looking down at her. The moonlight caught his features, sharp and handsome and unreadable. You commanded it, Alpha King. Her voice carried in the empty space. I had no choice. Everyone has choices. He moved along the balcony toward the stairs. Some are just more costly than others. Sera tracked his descent. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. When he reached the main floor, he didn't approach her, just stood 20 feet away, watching. Where are your brothers? She asked. Coming. His eyes never left her face. I wanted to speak with you first. Her pulse kicked. About what? About why you lied to us. The accusation hung in the air between them. Sera's jaw tightened. I haven't lied. The Alpha King. You said you don't remember where you got those cuffs. Rylan took a single step closer. That was a lie. How would you know? Because your heartbeat changed when you said it. Another step. Because your scent spiked with fear. Another. Because I've been trained since childhood to read deception. He stopped 10 feet away. So, I'll ask again, he said quietly. Where did you get iron suppression cuffs that haven't been manufactured in this territory for half a century? Sera's mind raced. She could feel the trap closing, could see the way he watched her, patient and relentless. I found them, she said. Where? I don't remember. Another lie. Then call me a liar and let me go. The words came out sharper than intended. I have kitchen duty at dawn. Rylan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're different, he said. From what? From 3 months ago. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. You used to look at the ground when we spoke. Now you meet my eyes. You destroyed me in front of the entire pack. Sera's voice was quiet, steady. There's nothing left to take. Why should I bow? The question landed between them like a challenge. Rylan went very still. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched, heavy with tension that felt different from before. Not quite anger, not quite curiosity. Something that made her skin prickle. That scent in the hallway, Rylan said finally. It wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. Sera said nothing. It smelled like... He stopped, shook his head. Like something I should recognize but can't place. Maybe you're imagining things. I don't imagine things. He took another step closer. Close enough now that she could smell him. Pine and winter air and the kind of dominance that made her wolf want to submit and fight in equal measure. Neither do my brothers. Is that why they sent you? To interrogate me alone? They didn't send me. His voice dropped lower. I came because I wanted answers before Damon turns this into an execution. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. Sera's breath hitched. Why do you care? Because we might have made a mistake, Rylan said quietly. And if we did, if you're not what we judged you to be, then what? Sera's control cracked. Just a little, just enough to let anger bleed through. You'll apologize? Take back the humiliation? Make the entire pack forget they watched me bleed on that platform? She pointed at the raised dais behind him. You can't undo what you did, Alpha King. So whatever answers you think you need, whatever guilt is eating at you. She met his eyes fully, let him see the rage she'd been swallowing for 3 months. It doesn't matter. Not to me. Rylan stared at her, really stared, like he was seeing her for the first time. Who are you? He asked. Before Sera could answer, the main door slammed open. Alpha King Daemon strode into the hall, Caden close behind him. Both of them stopped when they saw Rylan standing so close to her. Starting without us? Daemon's voice was cold, sharp. Rylan didn't move. Just talking. Looked like more than talking. Daemon crossed the distance in long strides. He moved between them, forcing Rylan back, putting himself directly in front of Sera. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating. Take off the cuffs, he said. Sera's blood turned to ice. No. That wasn't a request. I don't care. Her voice shook but held. You have no right. I have every right. Daemon leaned closer, his breath warm against her face. I'm your Alpha King. You're unmated, unranked. You have no claim to privacy. Then force me. The words ripped out of her. Do it publicly. Make another spectacle. Let the pack watch you strip an Omega in the main hall. Something dangerous flashed in Daemon's eyes. Careful. Or what? You'll shame me again? Sera laughed. It sounded broken. I'm already at the bottom, Alpha King. There's nowhere lower to fall. The silence that followed was deafening. Caden spoke from behind them, his voice quiet but cutting. She's right. Daemon, if you force this now, the pack will talk. Let them talk. We've already judged her once on assumption, Rylan added. We can't afford to look uncertain. Daemon's jaw locked, his hands curled into fists at his sides. He stared at Sera like he wanted to tear the truth from her body. Fine, he said finally. Keep your secrets. He stepped back. But understand this, little mouse. His voice dropped to something lethal. When I find out what you're hiding, and I will find out, there won't be mercy. He turned and walked away. Rylan lingered for a moment, his eyes on her wrists, on the careful leather wraps. 12 days, he said quietly. Sera's breath caught. He knew. Somehow, he knew. Until the blood moon ceremony, Rylan continued, when all registered bloodlines present their marks. His gaze lifted to hers. Will you be there? She couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Rylan nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something. Then he followed his brothers out of the hall. Sera stood alone in the moonlight, trembling. They were hunting her truth, and she was running out of time. The storm came 3 days later. Sera woke to thunder that rattled the thin windows of the servants' quarters. Rain hammered the roof in sheets, violent and unrelenting. She dressed in the dark, fingers clumsy as she wrapped fresh leather around her wrists, and made her way to the kitchens. The halls were empty. Too early even for the other Omegas. She preferred it that way. In the kitchen, she lit the fires, set water to boil, began pulling ingredients for breakfast preparations. The work was mindless, soothing. It kept her hands busy and her thoughts contained. 10 days left. 10 days until the blood moon ceremony. 10 days until... The kitchen door slammed open. Sera spun, knife in hand. Alpha King Caden stood in the doorway, soaked through. Water dripped from his dark hair, ran in rivulets down his face. His clothes clung to him. His eyes were urgent. The east wing is flooding, he said. We need every available hand, now. Sera set down the knife. I'll wake the others. No time. He was already turning. Just come. She didn't argue, didn't question. She grabbed a kitchen towel and followed him into the storm. The rain was brutal. It hit her face like needles, soaked through her thin dress in seconds. Caden moved fast, his stride long and purposeful. She had to run to keep up. They rounded the corner to the east wing. Water poured down the main staircase like a waterfall. The second-floor hallway was visible through the open balcony doors, completely flooded. Pack members rushed back and forth with buckets, blankets, anything to control the damage. Alpha King Rylan stood knee-deep in water, directing efforts. His voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "Close the balcony doors, divert the flow toward the exterior drains." Damon appeared from a side corridor, carrying a young Omega who looked half-drowned. He set her down gently, checked her breathing, then immediately turned back toward the flooded wing. "We need to shore up the east wall before the whole section collapses," he shouted. Caden pushed forward. "What do you need?" "Sandbags, lumber, more bodies." Damon's eyes swept the crowd and landed on Sera. She froze. "You," he pointed at her. "Can you carry weight?" She nodded. "And then move." He was already walking. "With me." Sera followed him through the flooded hallway. The water rose to her knees, cold and swift. It pulled at her dress, made each step treacherous. Ahead, Damon moved with absolute certainty, his body cutting through the current like it was nothing. They reached a storage room. Inside, sandbags were stacked floor to ceiling. "Grab as many as you can carry," Damon ordered. "We're building a barrier at the east wall breach." Sera moved to the nearest stack. The bags were heavy, rough canvas filled with wet sand. She managed two, one under each arm. Her shoulders screamed in protest. The iron cuffs made everything harder, drained her strength. She stumbled. Damon's hand shot out, steadying her. His grip was firm on her upper arm, warm despite the freezing water. For a second, where they stood close enough that she could see water drops caught in his eyelashes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes met hers. Something passed between them, brief, undefined. Then it was gone. "Careful," he said roughly, releasing her. "I'm not fishing you out if you drown." He grabbed 4 bags like they weighed nothing and strode back into the flood. Sera followed. For 2 hours they worked, building barriers, redirecting water, hauling supplies. The entire pack moved as one organism, hierarchy forgotten in the face of crisis. Alphas worked beside Omegas. Warriors carried supplies for healers. Even the Triplet Kings were soaked and filthy, indistinguishable from everyone else. Sera lost count of how many trips she made. Her arms burned, her legs shook, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Because every time she slowed, she felt eyes on her. Caden, watching her carry bags that should have been too heavy. Rylan, noticing when she didn't rest. Damon, tracking her every movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle. They were still hunting. Even now, in the middle of chaos, they were watching her. She was hauling another load when her foot caught on submerged debris. She went down hard. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Water closed over her head, cold and dark and disorienting. She tried to push up, but her dress tangled around her legs. The weight of the sandbags pulled her down. Strong hands grabbed her, hauled her up. Sera broke the surface, gasping, coughing, her vision blurred. "I've got you." Caden's voice, quiet, steady. He held her against his chest, one arm around her waist, keeping her head above water. She could feel the solid strength of him, the way his heart beat steady and calm while hers raced. "Can you stand?" he asked. She nodded, unable to speak. He helped her find her footing, didn't let go until he was sure she was stable. "You should rest," he said. "I'm fine. You're exhausted. So is everyone else." She pulled away from him, pushed wet hair from her face. "I'm not special." "No," Caden said quietly. "You're not." But the way he looked at her said otherwise. "The supply room." He gestured toward a door just ahead. "It's dry. You can catch your breath there for a moment." "I don't need—" It wasn't a suggestion. His tone left no room for argument. Sera moved toward the door. She expected him to leave, to return to the work. Instead, he followed her inside. The supply room was small, cramped, lined with shelves of tools and materials. A single window let in gray stormlight. Caden closed the door behind them. The silence was immediate, suffocating. Sera pressed her back against the shelves, creating distance. "You should go back out there." In a moment, he stayed by the door, arms crossed. Water dripped steadily from his clothes, creating small pools on the floor. Why are you pushing yourself like this? Like what? Like you have something to prove. Sera's jaw tightened. I'm just working, like everyone else. You're wearing iron suppression cuffs and carrying loads that would challenge a full-strength Omega. His eyes were too knowing, too sharp. Either you're foolish or you're much stronger than you should be. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be a start. Caden moved closer. Not threatening, just deliberate. My brothers think you're hiding something dangerous. Damon wants to force it out of you. Rylan thinks we made a mistake judging you. He stopped 3 feet away. But I think, he said quietly, you're terrified. The word landed like a blow. Sera's breath caught. She wanted to deny it. Wanted to throw his observation back in his face. But she couldn't. Because he was right. What are you afraid of? Caden asked. You, she whispered. All of you. His expression softened. Just a fraction. We won't hurt you again. Yes, you will. Sera's voice cracked. Because that's what alphas do to omegas who don't fit. Who don't belong. You destroy them and call it justice. Caden was quiet for a long moment. That's what we did to you, he said finally. Isn't it? We destroyed you. Sera couldn't answer. Her throat was too tight. I'm sorry. The apology hit her like a physical thing. She stared at him. What? I'm sorry. Caden's voice was low, genuine. For the judgment, for not verifying, for... He stopped, shook his head. For all of it. Sera's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. Your apology doesn't change anything, she managed. I know. He held her gaze. But you deserve to hear it anyway. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Rylan stood in the doorway, breathing hard. The east wall is collapsing. We need everyone now. Caden moved immediately. How bad? Bad enough that we're evacuating the wing. Rylan's eyes cut to Sera. Can you help move the elderly Omegas to the west quarters? She nodded. Then go, now. She pushed past them, back into the flooded hallway, back into the chaos. But Caden's apology echoed in her head, unwanted and dangerous, because forgiveness was a crack in her armor, and she couldn't afford cracks, not with 9 days left. By nightfall, the storm broke. The flood was contained, the damage assessed, the pack exhausted but intact. Sera sat in the servants' quarters, alone, staring at her wrapped wrists. The leather was soaked through, ruined. She'd have to replace it before morning. Before anyone saw what was underneath. She unwrapped the left wrist slowly, carefully. The mark beneath glowed faint gold in the dim light. Ancient, royal, undeniable. The crest of the Blood Moon lineage. The oldest werewolf family in the realm. The one everyone thought was extinct. Sera traced the mark with trembling fingers. In 9 days, 9 days, and the Triplet Alpha Kings who'd shamed her, destroyed her, dismissed her as unworthy, they would see this mark, and they would understand exactly what they'd done. She wrapped her wrist in fresh leather and tried not to think about the way Caden had apologized, the way Rylan had looked at her with something that might have been regret, the way Damon's hand had steadied her in the water. She couldn't afford to feel anything for them, not pity, not forgiveness, and definitely not the dangerous warmth spreading through her chest whenever they came close. She was prey who'd learned to survive predators, and in 9 days, she'd remind them exactly who the real predator was. The council meeting was supposed to be private. Sera only knew about it because she'd been sent to deliver wine to the chamber. For 3 bottles of the imported red the Triplet Kings preferred. She carried them on a silver tray, moving silently through the corridors toward the council room. She was 10 feet from the door when she heard her name. The Omega, Sera. That was Elder Rothus, his voice gravelly with age. There are questions about her. Sera stopped. She should have kept walking, should have knocked, delivered the wine, left. Instead, she pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Listened. What questions? Damon's voice was cold, irritated. Her presence during the flood was noted by several pack members. Another elder spoke. Female. Elder Maris. They say she carried loads no suppressed Omega should have been able to manage. She was helping, Rylan said, like everyone else. Perhaps. Elder Rothis didn't sound convinced. But it raises concerns about the judgment 3 months ago, about whether proper verification was conducted. Silence. Sera's heart pounded so hard she thought they might hear it through the wall. The judgment was lawful, Damon said finally. She had no registered bloodline, no family claim. And yet, Elder Maris continued, there are rumors, whispers that her scent carries something unusual, something old. Rumors aren't evidence, Caden said quietly. No, but they warrant investigation. Elder Rothis's chair scraped against stone, especially with the blood moon ceremony approaching. If she has hidden lineage, if she's been concealing her mark, then she's committed fraud, Damon finished, and the punishment is severe. Sera's blood ran cold. I propose, Elder Maris said, that we conduct a formal lineage verification before the ceremony to settle this matter. That would require her consent, Rylan pointed out, or a council order. Elder Rothis's tone was firm. Which we have the authority to issue if there's reasonable suspicion. More silence. Sera's mind raced. A formal verification meant healers, meant removing the cuffs, meant exposing her mark days before she was ready, meant losing control of the reveal. We'll consider it, Damon said. His voice was carefully neutral. Give us time to... The tray slipped from Sera's hands. The crash was deafening. Glass shattered. Wine spread across marble like blood. The council room door flew open. All 3 Alpha Kings stared at her. Behind them, the elders rose from their seats, eyes sharp with interest. Sera's voice failed. She dropped to her knees, began gathering broken glass with shaking hands. I'm sorry, I was bringing wine. I didn't mean to... How long have you been standing there? Damon's question cut through her panic. I just arrived. Don't lie. He moved toward her, each step deliberate. You heard. Sera's hands stilled in the wine. Glass bit into her palm. She didn't feel it. Yes, she whispered. I heard. Elder Rothis appeared in the doorway. Then you understand what's being proposed. She looked up at him, at his ancient, knowing eyes. A formal verification, she said quietly. You want to expose my mark. If you have one to expose, Elder Maris joined him. Do you, child? Every eye in that hallway fixed on her. Sera's wrapped wrists burned. Her wolf clawed at her chest, desperate to break free, to show them, to end the hiding. Not yet, she told it. 7 more days, just 7 more days. I have nothing to hide, she said. The lie tasted like poison. Damon crouched in front of her, close enough that she could see the doubt in his eyes, the suspicion. Then you'll submit to verification, he said. Tomorrow. No. The word came out stronger than she felt. His expression darkened. That wasn't a request. I know my rights. Sera forced herself to meet his gaze. A formal verification requires either consent or proof of fraud. You have neither. Your refusal is proof enough, Elder Rothis said. My refusal is my right as an unmated Omega. She looked past Damon to the elders. Or has pack law changed since you judged me unworthy? The barb landed. Elder Maris's lips thinned. You dare. She's right. Rylan's voice cut through the tension. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Pack law is clear. Why, without her consent or evidence of fraud, we can't force verification. The rumors, Elder Rothis began, are just rumors, Caden finished, moving to stand beside Rylan. Nothing more. Sera stared at them, at the 2 Alpha Kings defending her. She didn't understand why. Damon's jaw locked. He looked at his brothers with something that might have been betrayal. Fine, he said coldly. He stood, stepped back. No forced verification. Relief flooded through her. But, Damon continued, his eyes boring into hers, if we find evidence of fraud, if we discover you've been lying, then I'll face judgment, Sera interrupted. Again. The word hung between them, heavy with accusation. Damon's expression flickered. Just for a second, something that looked almost like guilt. Then it was gone. "Clean this up," he ordered. And stay out of council business." He walked away. The elders retreated into the chamber. The door closed with a heavy thud. Sera was left kneeling in wine and broken glass with Rylan and Caden standing over her. Neither of them moved. "You should be more careful," Rylan said finally. "Where you stand, what you hear." "I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "Yes, you did." But there was no anger in his voice, just observation. "You wanted to know what they were saying about you." She couldn't deny it. Caden crouched beside her, began helping gather the broken glass. His movements were careful, precise. "Why did you defend me?" Sera asked quietly. "Both of you." "Because the elders are wrong," Caden said. "Rumors aren't enough for forced verification." "That's not why." She looked at him, really looked at him. "You could have stayed silent and let Damon push for the order." Caden's hands stilled. He met her gaze. "Because I meant what I said," he replied. "I'm sorry for what we did to you, and forcing you into another public judgment wouldn't fix that mistake. It would have given you answers. Some answers aren't worth the cost." The gentleness in his voice made her chest ache. Rylan spoke from above them. "The blood moon ceremony is in 7 days." Sera's breath caught. "If you have a mark to present," Rylan continued, his tone measured, "that's when you'll reveal it. Not before. Not because elders demanded it." He was giving her permission, giving her control. She didn't know what to do with that. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Rylan was quiet for a long moment. Then he crouched down, bringing himself to her level. 3 months ago, might we judged you based on missing records and assumptions?" His eyes held hers. "We didn't verify, didn't investigate. We just decided you were unworthy and made it public." He paused. "That was wrong," he said quietly. "And I've spent 3 months watching you survive what we did to you. Watching you work harder than anyone else. Watching you endure whispers and isolation and shame." His voice dropped lower. "And I've started to wonder," he continued, "what we destroyed when we judged you." Sera's throat closed. "You didn't destroy me," she managed. "Didn't we?" Caden asked softly. She couldn't answer that, because they had. They'd shattered her that day on the platform, broken something fundamental in her that she'd spent 3 months trying to piece back together. But they'd also forged something new, something harder, something that would burn them when the truth came out. "I need to clean this up," she said, pulling away from them both. "Before someone slips." Rylan stood. "Sera..." "Thank you," she interrupted, "for defending me in there. But it doesn't change what happened. I know. And when the ceremony comes, when everyone sees what I am..." She stopped, shook her head. "It won't fix anything." "Maybe not," Caden said, "but at least you'll have your truth." They left her there, kneeling in wine that looked like blood, surrounded by broken glass, her wrists burning beneath leather wraps that suddenly felt too tight. 7 days. In 7 days, the entire pack would gather for the blood moon ceremony. Every registered bloodline would present their marks to be honored, and she would walk into that hall with her head high and her wrist bare. She would show them the mark they'd never thought to look for, the crest of the blood moon lineage, the royal family that everyone believed extinct, the bloodline that made her not just equal to the Triplet Alpha Kings, but above them. Sera gathered the last pieces of broken glass and stood. Her palm was bleeding where the glass had cut deep. She watched blood well in the wound, dark and steady. 7 days. 7 days, and they would see her bleed again. But this time, she wouldn't be on her knees. In the council chamber, Damon stood at the window, staring out at the pack grounds. Behind him, his brothers were silent. "You undermined me," he said finally, in front of the elders. "You were wrong," Rylan replied calmly. "I was protecting the pack." "From what? An Omega carrying supplies?" Caden's voice held reproach. or from the possibility that we made a mistake. Damon's hands curled into fists. If she's hiding something, then she has her reasons, Rylan interrupted, and forcing her hand won't make those reasons disappear. Damon turned to face them. You're defending her. We're defending pack law, Caden corrected. There's a difference. But Damon could see the truth in their eyes. They weren't just defending law, they were defending her. And he didn't understand why. Didn't understand the way his own chest had tightened when she'd knelt in that wine, bleeding and defiant and utterly alone. Didn't understand the guilt that had been growing for 3 months, slow and poisonous. The ceremony is in 7 days, he said flatly. If she presents a mark, we'll deal with it then. His brothers nodded, but as they filed out of the chamber, the one thought circled through Damon's mind on repeat. What if they'd destroyed something irreplaceable? And what if 7 days was too late to fix it? Sera found the garden by accident. She'd been looking for medicinal herbs for the kitchens, following a narrow path behind the west wing that most pack members had forgotten existed. The path opened into a small enclosed space, overgrown and wild, surrounded by high stone walls covered in climbing vines. It was hidden, quiet, safe. She came back the next night, and the night after that. It became her refuge, the only place in the entire territory where she could breathe without feeling watched, where she could unwrap her wrists and let the mark breathe, let it glow faint gold under moonlight. 6 days left. She was sitting on the crumbling stone bench, wrist bare, when she heard footsteps. Her heart stopped. She grabbed the leather wraps, began winding them frantically around her wrist, but the footsteps were too close, too fast. I thought I might find you here. Caden stepped through the garden entrance. Sera's hands froze. The mark was half covered, half visible, glowing. Caden stopped when he saw it. His eyes widened, just fractionally. Then his gaze lifted to hers. Don't, she whispered. Please don't. I'm not going to tell them. The words stunned her into silence. Caden moved closer, slow and deliberate, like approaching a wounded animal. He stopped 3 feet away, his eyes tracking the partial mark on her wrist. How long have you known, she asked, that you were hiding something? He sat down on the opposite end of the bench. Since the flood, the way you carried those sandbags, and the way your scent changed when you were exhausted, and your control slipped. Sera's throat tightened. And you said nothing. Because it wasn't my secret to tell. He was quiet for a moment. May I see it? Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to cover it, to run. But something in his voice stopped her. Genuine curiosity, not demand, not dominance, just quiet interest. Slowly, she unwound the rest of the leather. The mark gleamed in the moonlight, intricate, ancient. A crescent moon surrounded by elaborate knotwork and symbols that predated modern pack language. The blood moon crest. Caden stared at it. I've seen this mark before, he said quietly. In the old archives, in history texts. Then you know what it means. That you're descended from the blood moon lineage. He looked up at her. The royal family that disappeared 3 generations ago. Sera nodded. Everyone thought they were extinct. Caden continued. Killed in the purge. Not killed, Sera said softly. Hidden. My grandmother escaped, changed her name, suppressed her mark. She had my mother in secret, taught her to do the same. And you? My mother died when I was 8. She made me promise to keep it hidden, to never show anyone what I was. Sera's voice cracked. Because royal blood makes you a target, makes you dangerous. Caden was silent, processing. So you've been alone, he said finally. Since you were 8 years old, hiding what you are, carrying iron suppression. Yes. And we judged you unworthy. The words came out rough, heavy with regret. We shamed you publicly for having no bloodline. When you were carrying one of the oldest bloodlines in existence. Sera couldn't look at him. I'm sorry, Caden said. You already apologized. And I'll keep apologizing until it means something. He shifted closer. What we did to you was unforgivable. But what you've survived? He stopped, shook his head. You're stronger than any Omega I've ever met. I'm not strong. Sera's hands trembled in her lap. I'm terrified. Every single day. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's surviving despite it. The gentleness in his voice broke something in her chest. A sob caught in her throat. She tried to swallow it, tried to hold it in the way she'd been holding everything for 3 months, but it escaped anyway. And then she was crying. Not delicate tears, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. 3 months of pain and humiliation and loneliness pouring out of her in waves she couldn't control. Caden moved. One moment he was across the bench. The next he was beside her, pulling her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you. Sera fisted her hands in his shirt and let herself break. For the first time since the judgment, she let someone see her shatter, and Caden held her through it. He didn't try to quiet her, didn't tell her it was okay or that everything would be fine. He just held her, let her soak his shirt with tears, and cling to him like he was the only solid thing in her world. When the sobs finally subsided into hiccups, when she had nothing left to cry, she stayed pressed against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear. His warmth surrounded her. His scent, pine and something clean and calming, wrapped around her like safety. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. His hand moved slowly through her hair. You needed that. I don't cry, I never cry. Maybe you should more often. She almost smiled. Almost. They sat in silence for a long moment. Sera knew she should pull away, should put distance between them, but she couldn't make herself move. In 6 days, Caden said quietly, when you present your mark at the ceremony, everything will change. I know. The pack will see what you are, what we missed. He paused. What we destroyed. You didn't destroy me, Sera said. You tried, but I'm still here. You shouldn't have had to survive us. She pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was close, too close. She could see the regret in his eyes, and the guilt that had been eating at him. Why do you care? She asked. Why does it matter to you? Caden's jaw worked. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hand came up, fingertips brushing her jaw with devastating gentleness. Because from the moment I saw you on that platform 3 months ago, he said quietly, something in me said this was wrong. That we were wrong. Sera's breath caught. I ignored it, he continued. Told myself we'd made the right decision. But I watched you after. Watched you survive and work and endure. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I realized I wasn't watching you to make sure you stayed in your place. Why then? Because I couldn't stop. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Because every time you walked into a room, my wolf recognized something, like you were... He stopped. Like I was what? Sera's heart pounded. Caden's eyes held hers, dark, troubled, honest. Like you were mine to protect, he finished. Even though I was the one who hurt you. The confession hung between them. Sera should have pulled away, should have said something cutting, something that reminded him she wasn't his, would never be his. But she didn't. Because she'd felt it too. That pull, that recognition. Even through the shame and pain, some part of her wolf had reached for him in that hallway after the flood, had trusted him when she shouldn't. Caden, she whispered. He leaned closer, his forehead touched hers. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, close enough to kiss, but not closing the distance. In 6 days, he murmured, everything changes. I know. Will you forgive us? The question was raw, vulnerable. Ever? Sera closed her eyes. I don't know, she answered honestly. I don't know if I can. That's fair. His breath was warm against her lips. We don't deserve it. No, she agreed. You don't. But even as she said it, even as she meant it, she didn't pull away, didn't break contact. Because for one moment, in this hidden garden with moonlight filtering through vines, she let herself feel something other than anger. Something dangerous. Something that felt like forgiveness trying to take root. Caden pulled back first. The loss of his warmth made her shiver. "You should go," he said quietly, "before someone realizes we're both missing." Sera nodded. She began wrapping the leather around her wrist again, covering the mark. "Sera," Caden said as she stood. She looked back. "Whatever happens in 6 days," he said. "Whatever changes, I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you." Tears burned behind her eyes again. She blinked them away. 6 days, she said. Then she walked out of the garden before she could do something foolish. Like believe him. Like let herself feel safe. Like fall for the Alpha King who'd destroyed her. Caden sat alone in the garden for a long time after she left. His shirt was damp with her tears. His chest ached with the weight of her pain. And his wolf was howling, claiming, recognizing. "Mine," it said. "Ours. Protect. Claim. Keep." Caden pressed his palms against his eyes and tried to breathe through the realization that was crushing him. They'd found their mate 3 months ago, and they'd shamed her publicly before they'd recognized her. In 6 days, when Sera presented her mark, and when the entire pack saw what she was, his brothers would realize it too. They'd all feel that pull, that recognition, and they'd understand that they hadn't just judged an unworthy Omega. They'd rejected their mate. Caden stood on shaking legs and walked back toward the pack house. He had to tell his brothers, had to warn them what was coming. But as he moved through the dark corridors, one thought circled through his mind. Would she ever forgive them? And if she didn't, how would they survive it? Caden didn't tell his brothers. For 3 days, he carried the truth alone. Watched Sera move through the pack house like a ghost. Watched his brothers continue their lives, unaware that in 3 days, everything would detonate. He told himself he was giving her control, letting her reveal the truth on her terms. But really, he was a coward. And because once Damon and Rylan knew, once they felt that mate pull, everything would become complicated in ways Caden couldn't predict. On the 3rd night, his silence shattered. He was walking past the library when he heard voices. Low, tense, Damon and Rylan. "The elders are pushing again," Rylan said. "They want the verification before the ceremony." "We told them no," Damon replied. "They're not accepting it. They're threatening to bring it before the full council." Caden stepped into the doorway. Both brothers looked up. "We have a problem," Damon said without preamble. "Elder Rothus is convinced the Omega is hiding fraud. He's gathering support for a forced verification." "He can't," Caden said. "Pack law can be overridden by full council vote if there's reasonable suspicion." Rylan's expression was troubled. And he's building a case. Witnesses from the flood. Her refusal to consent. The rumors about her scent. Caden's blood ran cold. "When?" "Tomorrow night. Emergency council session." Damon's jaw was tight. "If they vote for verification, we'll have to enforce it." "No." Both brothers stared at him. "No?" Damon repeated. "It's not a choice, Caden. If the council orders it, she's our mate." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Silence. Complete, crushing silence. Rylan stood slowly. "What did you say?" "Sera, the Omega, we judged." Caden's voice was steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. "She's our mate." "That's impossible," Damon said flatly. "We would have felt it. Would have recognized. She's wearing iron suppression." Caden moved into the room. "Heavy enough to bury her wolf. Hide her scent. But I've been close to her. Close enough to feel it through the suppression." "When?" Rylan's voice was sharp. "When were you close to her?" "The flood. The garden." Caden met their eyes. "And before you ask, yes, I'm sure." Damon's face had gone pale. "The garden. You've been meeting her in secret." "I've been talking to her, listening to her." Caden's hands curled into fists. "Something neither of you bothered to do." "Watch your tone," Damon warned. "Or what? You'll judge me unworthy too?" The anger in Caden's voice surprised even him. "We destroyed our mate, Damon. We We humiliated her in front of the entire pack without even verifying. Stop saying that, Damon snarled. She can't be our mate. It doesn't make sense. Her scent in the hallway, Rylan said quietly. His face had gone ashen. When she dropped the basket, just that spike of old magic. Was mate scent breaking through suppression? Caden finished. You felt it. Both of you felt it. You just didn't recognize it. Rylan sank back into his chair. Oh, gods. Damon stood frozen. His expression cycled through denial, realization, horror. She has a mark, doesn't she? Rylan asked. A bloodline mark. Caden hesitated, then nodded. What bloodline? Blood moon. The words landed like an explosion. Damon's head snapped up. That's extinct. The entire family was hidden, not killed. Caden's voice was rough. She's been hiding it her entire life, wearing iron suppression since childhood to keep it buried. And we judged her unworthy, Rylan said hollowly. We shamed our mate for having no bloodline when she was carrying royal blood. Damon turned away, pressed his palms flat against the desk. His shoulders shook. The ceremony is in 3 days, he said. She's going to present the mark. Yes. And the entire pack will see what we missed. Damon's voice was barely controlled. They'll know we rejected our mate, judged her without verification. Good, Caden said coldly. We deserve that shame. Damon spun on him. You knew. For days you knew and said nothing. Because it wasn't my secret to tell. We're your brothers. Damon's roar filled the room. You should have... What? Told you so you could force another verification? Drag her through more humiliation? Caden stepped forward. She's suffered enough at our hands. We didn't know, Rylan said quietly. We should have. Caden's voice cracked. We're Alpha Kings. We're supposed to protect. Instead, we broke her. The truth hung heavy in the air, and Damon's hands were shaking. Caden had never seen his brother shake. We have to fix this, Damon said. I don't think we can. We have to try. Damon looked at Rylan. The council vote tomorrow. We stop it, whatever it takes. Rylan nodded slowly. And then? Then we wait for the ceremony. Damon's jaw was tight, and we face what we did. She may never forgive us, Caden said. I know. Damon's voice was hollow. But she's our mate. We have to try. Sera woke to pounding on her door. She sat up, disoriented. The servants' quarters were dark, silent except for the furious knocking. Sera! Maya's voice, urgent, afraid. Open the door! Sera stumbled from bed, threw the door open. Maya stood in the hallway, face pale, eyes wide. What's wrong? Emergency council session. Tonight. Maya grabbed her arm. They're voting on forced verification. For you. The world tilted. What? Elder Rothus convinced enough council members. They're meeting now. Maya's grip tightened. If they vote yes, you'll be taken at dawn. They'll strip the cuffs, expose your mark. They can't, Sera whispered. Pack law. They're overriding it. Full council vote supersedes individual rights if fraud is suspected. Maya's eyes were desperate. You need to run, child. Now. Before the vote finishes. Run. The word echoed through Sera's mind. She could run, disappear, hide like her mother and grandmother had hidden, or... No, she said quietly. Maya stared at her. What? I'm not running. Sera moved back into her room, began dressing with shaking hands. Not anymore. Sera, if they force verification, then they'll see what I am. She pulled on her dress. Wrapped the leather around her wrists with practiced efficiency. 3 days early. Fine. You're not thinking clearly. I'm done hiding, Maya. Sera's voice was steady now, certain. I've been hiding my entire life, hiding what I am, hiding from shame, from fear. She faced the older Omega. They want to verify my bloodline? Sera's eyes blazed. Then let's show them. She walked out of the room. Maya followed, protesting, but Sera barely heard her. She moved through the corridors toward the council chamber. Her heart pounded. Her wolf clawed at her chest, sensing freedom. The council chamber doors were closed, guarded. Sera walked straight toward them. The guards crossed their spears, blocking her path. "Council is in session," one said. "No entry." "I'm the subject of their session," Sera replied. "Why, I have a right to face my accusers." "You have no rights until—" The doors opened. Alpha King Caden stood in the doorway. His eyes found hers immediately. "Let her through," he said. The guards hesitated, looked at each other. "That's an order," Caden's voice dropped to command. "From your Alpha King." They stepped aside. Sera walked into the council chamber. 20 wolves sat in a circle. The elders, council members, and at the center, the 3 Triplet Alpha Kings. Damon and Rylan stood when they saw her. Their expressions were unreadable. "The Omega has no place here," Elder Rothus said sharply. "She has every right to be here," Rylan countered. "You're voting on her fate. She deserves to face you." "This is highly irregular." "So is voting for forced verification based on rumors," Caden interrupted. Sera walked to the center of the circle, stood alone, surrounded by power and judgment, just like 3 months ago. But this time, she wasn't on her knees. "You want verification," she said. Her voice carried in the silent chamber. "You want to know what I'm hiding?" "Yes," Elder Rothus said. "Why should I show you?" Sera looked at each council member in turn. "You've already judged me unworthy once. Why should I give you the satisfaction of knowing you were wrong?" Murmurs rippled through the council. "Because fraud against the crown is punishable by exile," Elder Maris said coldly, "or death." "And what's the punishment for wrongful judgment?" Sera's gaze cut to the Triplet Kings. "For shaming an innocent Omega publicly without proper verification? What's the punishment for that?" Damon's jaw tightened. No one answered. "Oi, I'll show you what I am," Sera said quietly. "But not because you're ordering me. Not because you're threatening me." She began unwrapping the leather from her left wrist. "I'll show you," she continued, "because I'm done being ashamed of what I was born to be." The leather fell away. The mark blazed gold in the torchlight. The blood moon crest. Intricate, ancient, undeniable. The council chamber erupted, gasps, shouts, wolves rising from their seats. "Impossible," someone breathed. "The blood moon line is extinct." "That's a royal mark." "She's been hiding it for months." Elder Rothus stood, face pale. "How long have you carried that mark?" "Since birth," Sera said. "Like my mother before me, like my grandmother before her." "Why hide it?" Elder Maris demanded. "So why suppress it? Because royal blood makes you a target?" Sera's voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Because my mother taught me that revealing what I am would either make me a pawn or a corpse." She looked at the Triplet Kings. She was right. Damon flinched like she'd struck him. "You judged me unworthy," Sera continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shamed me publicly, made me bleed on that platform." She held up her wrist, let them all see the mark clearly. "Not because I lacked bloodline," she said, "but because you didn't bother to verify. You assumed. You decided. You destroyed." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So, here's your verification, Elder Rothus." She turned slowly, showing every council member the mark. "Here's your proof. I am Sera of the Blood Moon lineage. A last living heir of the royal family you thought extinct." She faced the Triplet Kings again. "And you 3?" Her voice dropped dangerously low. "Rejected your mate." The words hit like physical blows. Rylan went white. Caden closed his eyes. Damon stood frozen, every line of his body rigid with shock. "What?" Elder Rothus breathed. "You heard me." Sera's hands curled into fists. "The moon chose me for them, marked me as their mate, and they destroyed me before they recognized it." The council chamber fell deathly silent. "That's impossible," Elder Maris whispered. "They would have felt the bond through iron suppression?" Sera laughed bitterly. "Through cuffs I've worn since childhood? The bond was there, buried, waiting." She walked toward the Triplet Kings. They stood like statues, watching her approach with expressions that cycled between horror and devastation. You wanted verification. Sera stopped 3 feet from them. You wanted truth? She held up her wrist. Here's the truth. I am your mate. I am royal blood. And I am done being your victim. She turned to the council. I'll present my mark at the Blood Moon ceremony as planned. I'll claim my rightful place in this pack's hierarchy. Her voice rang with authority. She'd been suppressing her entire life. And I'll let the entire pack see exactly what their Alpha Kings did to the woman the moon chose for them. With that, she walked toward the door. No one stopped her. No one spoke. She was almost through the doorway when Damon's voice reached her. Sera. She paused but didn't turn. I'm sorry, he said. His voice cracked on the words. I'm so sorry. Sera's shoulders shook with silent, bitter laughter. Save your apologies for the ceremony, Alpha King. She looked back over her shoulder. You'll need them. Then she walked out, leaving 3 Alpha Kings standing in wreckage of their own making, and a council chamber full of witnesses who would carry this story to every corner of the pack before dawn. Sera didn't go back to the servants' quarters. She couldn't face the small room, the thin walls, the weight of what she'd just done pressing down on her. Instead, she walked. Through corridors, past sleeping quarters, out into the cold night air. Her feet carried her to the garden, the hidden place where Caden had held her while she broke, where she'd let herself feel safe for one foolish moment. She sank onto the stone bench and stared at her bare wrist. And the mark glowed steady and certain. No more leather wraps, no more hiding. She'd done it, revealed everything 3 days early, ripped control away from herself and thrown the truth at them like a weapon. And now she had to live with the aftermath. Footsteps on the path. Sera didn't look up. She knew who it was, could feel the mate bond humming stronger now without suppression between them. Ryland stepped into the garden alone. He stopped at the entrance, hands loose at his sides. Not threatening, not commanding, just present. May I sit? He asked quietly. Sera gestured to the bench without looking at him. He sat at the opposite end, far enough to give her space, close enough that she felt the warmth of him. They sat in silence for a long moment. I didn't know, Ryland said finally. That's not an excuse, or just truth. You should have. Sera's voice was empty. You're Alpha Kings. You're supposed to verify before judging. That's the law you swore to uphold. Yes. But you didn't. No. He was quiet. We assumed, based on incomplete records and our own arrogance, and we hurt you. Sera finally looked at him. Ryland's face was drawn, tired. His eyes held genuine anguish that she didn't want to acknowledge because acknowledging it meant feeling something other than anger. Why? She asked. Why come here? Why not send Caden? He's the one I talked to, the one who... She stopped. The one you trusted, Ryland finished softly. I know. He told us. About the garden? About everything. Ryland's jaw worked. About holding you while you cried. About seeing your mark. About carrying the secret because you asked him to. Sera's chest tightened. He wasn't supposed to tell you. He had to. The council was forcing verification. We needed to stop them. Ryland turned to face her more fully. But he protected you for as long as he could. Protected your choice to reveal the truth on your terms. Until I took that choice away myself, Sera said bitterly. You took control, Ryland corrected. There's a difference. They fell silent again. Sera studied the mark on her wrist, traced the ancient symbols with her fingertip. Do you feel it? She asked quietly. The mate bond? Yes. Ryland's voice was rough. Now that the suppression is gone, it's... He stopped. Overwhelming. Is that why you're here? Because the bond is pulling you? Partially. He was honest. But mostly because I needed to see you, to make sure you were all right. I'm not all right. Sera's hands trembled in her lap. I just destroyed any chance of a normal life in this pack. By the time the sun rises, everyone will know what I am, what you did to me, what you are to me. I know. And in 2 days, I have to stand in front of the entire pack and claim my bloodline." She laughed hollowly, while standing next to the 3 men who shamed me. "We'll stand with you," Rylan said. "Not beside you as equals, behind you, supporting you." Sera looked at him sharply. "What?" "Your blood moon lineage, royal blood." Rylan's gaze was steady. "That places you above us in hierarchy, above everyone in this pack." The implications hit her like a fist. "No," she whispered. "Yes." Rylan's voice was gentle but firm. "When you present that mark at the ceremony, when the bloodline is verified and registered, you'll become the highest-ranking wolf in the territory." Sera's breath came faster. "I don't want that." "I know. But it's what you are." "I'm nobody. I'm a kitchen Omega who carries the blood of kings." Rylan shifted closer. "Who survived what we did to you and came out stronger. Who faced a council full of power and made them see their mistake." "I'm terrified," Sera admitted. "So am I." The confession was raw. "I'm terrified we destroyed something we can never fix, that you'll never forgive us, that we'll spend the rest of our lives knowing we rejected our mate." Tears burned behind Sera's eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she whispered. "Any of you." "That's fair. Every time I look at you, I remember kneeling on that platform, remember the laughter, the blood." Her voice cracked. "Remember how you stood with your backs to me like I wasn't worth facing?" "I know." Rylan's hands curled into fists. "And I hate myself for it. Every single day since, I've hated myself." "Good." The word came out vicious. Rylan flinched but didn't argue. Sera wiped her eyes angrily. "Why did you come here? Really?" "Because I needed you to know something." Rylan turned to face her fully. "When that mark is presented at the ceremony, when you take your rightful place, you don't owe us anything. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, not even acknowledgement." She stared at him. "The mate bond doesn't obligate you to us," he continued quietly. "You can reject it, reject us. The moon may have chosen us for you, but you get to choose whether you want us." "And if I choose no?" Pain flashed across his face. "Then we live with it. We accept that we destroyed the best thing the moon ever gave us." Sera's breath hitched. "But regardless of what you choose," Rylan said, "we'll stand behind you at that ceremony. We'll support your claim. We'll make sure the entire pack sees us honoring you." "Why?" "Because it's what you deserve, what we should have done from the beginning." His voice dropped. "And because even if you never forgive us, even if you reject the bond completely, you're still ours to protect." The words landed soft and devastating. Sera turned away, unable to look at him, unable to process the gentleness in his voice when all she wanted was to stay angry. "I should go," Rylan said. He stood slowly. "I just needed you to hear that, before the ceremony, before everything changes." He started toward the path. "Rylan." He stopped, looked back. "Thank you," Sera said quietly, "for stopping the council vote, for giving me the choice." Something vulnerable crossed his face. "I wish we'd given you choices from the beginning." Then he was gone. Sera sat alone in the garden, her mark glowing in the moonlight, and tried to breathe through the storm in her chest. She was angry, so angry she could taste it. But beneath the anger, something else stirred, something that felt like the first fragile root of forgiveness. And she hated herself for feeling it. In the pack house, 3 Alpha Kings sat in heavy silence. "How is she?" Damon asked when Rylan returned. "Hurt, angry, terrified." Rylan sank into a chair. "Everything we made her feel." Caden stood at the window, shoulders tight. "The pack is talking. By dawn, everyone will know." "Good," Damon said roughly. "Let them know. We let them see what we did." "The ceremony is in 2 days." Rylan rubbed his face. "We need to prepare." "For what?" Caden turned. "For presenting our mate to the pack after we destroyed her? For watching her take her rightful place while knowing we'll never deserve to stand beside her? For supporting her, Damon said. His voice was hard. However she needs, whatever she decides. And if she rejects us? Caden asked. Damon's jaw locked. Then we accept it, and we live with what we've done. The mate bond hummed in all three of them now, stronger without suppression, clear and undeniable and aching with distance. They could feel her pain, her anger, her fear, and beneath it all, feel her wolf calling to theirs. A call they'd ignored 3 months ago. A call that might never come again. We destroyed her, Caden said hollowly. And I know, Damon's voice cracked, and I don't know how to fix it. They sat in silence, 3 Alpha Kings brought to their knees by the weight of their mistake. 2 days until the ceremony. 2 days to figure out how to stand behind the woman they'd shamed. 2 days before the entire pack saw the truth, that the Triplet Alpha Kings had rejected their mate, and she had every right to reject them in return. In the garden, Sera pressed her hand to her chest. She could feel them through the bond. 3 distinct presences. Damon's fierce regret, Ryland's quiet anguish, Caden's gentle sorrow. Her wolf wanted to go to them, wanted to answer their call, wanted to forgive and heal and bond, but her heart remembered blood and laughter and shame. And her mind whispered the question that would define everything. Could she forgive men who'd destroyed her, even if the moon said they belonged together? Even if every instinct screamed to accept them? She had 2 days to decide, 2 days to choose between anger and forgiveness, between justice and mercy, between the woman she'd been forced to become and the woman she might still be. Sera looked at her mark one last time, then she wrapped it in fresh leather, not to hide anymore, but to protect. Because in 2 days, she would bear it to the world, and whatever came after, she would face it on her terms. Sera stood in the garden with the leather wrapped around her wrist, her fingers still trembling from tying the knot. The night air moved through the vines overhead, rustling leaves in a rhythm that matched her unsteady breathing. 2 days. The words echoed in her mind like a countdown. 2 days until she stood before the entire pack. 2 days until everything she'd hidden became undeniable truth. She pressed her wrapped wrist against her chest, felt her heartbeat strong and insistent beneath her palm. The mate bond hummed. Still there, still pulling. She could feel them even now. 3 separate threads of awareness, each distinct. Damon's presence burned hot, all sharp edges and barely contained intensity. Ryland's felt steady, like deep water, calm on the surface but moving beneath. Caden's was gentle, a quiet warmth that reminded her of safety she'd almost forgotten existed. Her wolf stirred, restless and wanting. Not yet, she told it, not yet. But even as she thought it, she knew something had shifted tonight. And some wall she'd built around herself had cracked when Ryland sat beside her and gave her permission to reject them, when he'd said she didn't owe them anything, when he'd promised they'd stand behind her regardless. Footsteps again. Sera's head lifted, her pulse jumped, but this time she didn't tense, didn't prepare to run. She just waited. Damon stepped into the garden. He stopped when he saw her, his tall frame backlit by moonlight filtering through the entrance. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything unsaid. I told Ryland to leave you alone, Damon said finally. His voice was rougher than usual, but I couldn't. Sera's throat tightened. Why are you here? Because I need to say something, and if I wait 2 more days, I'll lose my nerve. He took a step closer, just one. May I? She gestured to the bench. Damon sat, but not at the opposite end like Ryland had. He sat in the middle, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, close enough that his scent wrapped around her. Cedar and smoke and something darker, something that made her wolf whine softly. He stared at his hands for a long moment. I was the one who spoke first, he said quietly, 3 months ago, on that platform. Sera's breath caught. I was the one who said you were unworthy. Damon's voice was barely above a whisper. Ryland and Caden followed my lead. They trusted my judgment. but it was my words that condemned you. His hands curled into fists on his knees. I've spent 3 months trying to justify it, he continued, telling myself we did what was right, that we protected the pack, that we followed protocol. He finally looked at her. But the truth is, I was lazy, arrogant. I saw incomplete records and made assumptions because it was easier than investigating. Tears burned behind Sera's eyes. And when I saw you afterward, Damon's voice cracked, when I watched you survive what I did to you, work harder than anyone, endure the whispers and the isolation, I told myself you were just resilient, that you were fine. I wasn't fine, Sera whispered. I know. Pain flashed across his face. I know, and I saw it, and I did nothing, because admitting I was wrong felt impossible. He shifted, turned to face her more fully. But I was wrong, Sera. Catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. His eyes held hers, winter storm intensity focused entirely on her. And I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Why, but I need you to know that I see you now, really see you. And what I see is someone extraordinary. Sera's hands trembled in her lap. You survived us, Damon continued. You survived public humiliation and shame and 3 months of being invisible, and you came out stronger, braver. You faced a council full of power tonight and made them see their mistake. You didn't beg, didn't plead. You just stood there and demanded they see your truth. He reached toward her, then stopped, hand hovering in the space between them. That's not weakness, he said softly. That's strength I've never seen in anyone, Omega or Alpha. A tear slipped down Sera's cheek before she could stop it. I broke you, Damon whispered, and I hate myself for it. You didn't break me. Sera's voice came out steady despite the tears. You tried. But I'm still here. You shouldn't have had to survive me. No, she agreed. I shouldn't have. Damon's expression crumpled. He looked away, jaw working. In 2 days, he said roughly, when you present your mark, when you take your place above us, I want you to know something. Sera waited. Whether you forgive us or not, whether you accept the bond or reject it, I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever hurts you again. His voice was fierce, absolute. That's not a promise to win you back. It's just truth. You're mine to protect, even if you're never mine to hold. The words landed soft and devastating. Sera looked at him, really looked at him, saw the guilt carved into every line of his face, the regret in his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly where they rested on his knees. He meant it, every word. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Damon turned back to her. Of what? Of forgiving you, of letting myself feel the bond. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Of wanting something I know can hurt me. Then don't forgive me, Damon said. Stay angry, stay guarded, whatever keeps you safe. But what if I want to forgive you? The question came out broken. What if part of me already does, and I hate myself for it? Damon went very still. Then that's your choice, he said carefully, and whatever you choose, I'll respect it. Sera's hand drifted to her wrapped wrist, to the mark hidden beneath leather. The bond, she started, then stopped, tried again. I can feel all 3 of you, all the time now. It's like you're inside my chest, taking up space I didn't know was empty. Does it hurt? Damon asked. No. She met his eyes. Deuce, that's what scares me. It doesn't hurt. It feels like coming home. Something raw and vulnerable crossed Damon's face. Sera, he breathed. I'm not ready, she said quickly, to accept it, to accept you, any of you, not yet. I understand. But I'm not saying never either. Hope flickered in Damon's eyes, fragile, tentative. What are you saying? He asked. Sera took a shaky breath. I'm saying that in 2 days, when I stand before the pack and present my mark, I want to see where I stand without the weight of shame. I want to claim my bloodline and my place and figure out who I am when I'm not hiding. She looked at her wrist, then back at him. And then, she continued softly, Maybe I can figure out if there's room in that life for 3 Alpha Kings who destroyed me before they knew me. Damon's breath hitched. That's more than I deserve. Probably, Sera agreed. But the moon chose you for me. All 3 of you. And maybe there's a reason for that beyond what any of us understand right now. Silence settled between them, softer than before, less jagged. 2 days, Damon said. 2 days, Sera echoed. Damon stood slowly. He looked down at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, his expression was completely open, vulnerable, in a way she'd never imagined he could be. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on us before we had a chance to prove we're worth keeping. He started toward the path. Damon. He stopped, turned. Sera stood, moved closer, close enough that only a foot of space separated them. In 2 days, she said, when I present my mark, I need you to understand something. What? I'm not doing it for you. Oh, or for Rylan, or for Caden. Her voice was steady, clear. I'm doing it for me, because I'm done being ashamed of what I am. Good, Damon said. You should never be ashamed. Sera nodded. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his hand. Just barely. Just enough for skin to meet skin. The mate bond flared. Heat and recognition, and something that felt like rightness flooded through both of them. Damon's breath caught. His hand turned, fingers curling gently around hers. They stood like that, hands clasped, eyes locked. This doesn't mean I forgive you, Sera whispered. I know, Damon said. But maybe, she continued, voice soft and uncertain, it means I'm willing to try. Something that looked like tears gathered in Damon's eyes. He blinked them away, but not before she saw them. That's enough, he said roughly. That's more than enough. Sera squeezed his hand once, then let go. The loss of contact ached, but it was necessary. She wasn't ready for more. Not yet. Damon seemed to understand. He stepped back, gave her space. 2 days, he said again. Then he was gone. Sera stood alone in the garden, her hand still warm from his touch, the mate bond humming content and alive in her chest. She could feel all 3 of them now, not just their presence, but their emotions. Damon's cautious hope, Rylan's quiet relief, Caden's gentle joy. They felt her too, felt her uncertainty, her fear, her tentative willingness to try. And through the bond, like a whisper carried on wind, she felt their response. We'll wait. However long it takes, we'll wait. Sera unwrapped the leather from her wrist one last time. Let the mark glow in the moonlight. In 2 days, she would stand before the pack. In 2 days, she would claim her bloodline and her place. In 2 days, everything would change. But tonight, in this hidden garden, with moonlight filtering through vines and the mate bond humming gentle and certain in her chest, Sera let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 3 months. Hope. She smiled. It was small, fragile, but it was real. And for the first time since that platform, since the blood and the shame and the laughter, Sera believed that maybe eventually she could be whole again, not despite what happened, but because of how she survived it. She wrapped the leather around her wrist one final time, securing it with practiced efficiency. 2 days. 2 days until the blood moon ceremony. So 2 days until the Triplet Alpha Kings who'd shamed her would stand behind her while she claimed her throne. 2 days until she showed the entire pack what they'd tried to destroy. And maybe, if she was brave enough, if they proved worthy enough, someday she'd let them stand beside her instead. But that was a choice for another day. Tonight, she just needed to breathe, to feel the bond, to remember that she was still here, still standing, still Sera of the Blood Moon lineage. Last living heir, rejected mate, survivor. She walked out of the garden with her head high and her heart just a little less heavy than when she'd entered. And somewhere in the pack house, 3 Alpha Kings felt her peace through the bond and finally allowed themselves to hope. That maybe, eventually, they could earn what the moon had given them, and that maybe forgiveness wasn't impossible. That maybe love could grow from the ashes of their worst mistake. 2 days. Everything would change in 2 days. But tonight, for the first time in 3 months, all 4 of them went to sleep believing that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. For healing, for forgiveness, for the future the moon had always intended. Together. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever be, so do check it out. Hit that subscribe. The next chapter drops soon.